So let's get this started. So first off, huge thank you to everybody who's on the call today for attending this webinar. Put a lot of thought and try to, sorry, real quick. I do see a question. It will be recorded and shared afterwards. So yeah, everything will be captured today for follow-up after. But yeah, so thank you for all for being here today. Appreciate you coming out. If you haven't met me before, my name's Tatum Tummins. I'm a senior product manager here at Kion. And one of the things I like to do at the start of every webinar is share kind of my background. So prior to coming to Kion, I think my 2-year anniversary is here in about 3 weeks. I was a FinOps practitioner for almost 8 years at a large healthcare company. And for, like potentially many of you on the call today, was doing FinOps before it was a term that we talked about or we knew. And I like to say I professionally grew up in the industry and in a lot of ways was a FinOps nerd for a long time. And I share that because I think it's important to know when I'm crafting a webinar like this, yes, it's driven by the customers and prospects that I get to work with every day now that I'm on the vendor side, but it's also my perspective as a former practitioner and the things that I, wanted for my practice or the ways that I approach problems. And so I try to stay up to date on where I think the industry is going and what I'm hearing from our customers every day, and try to package that into something that I hope you leave here today and find useful and helpful. And that leads us to our topic today, which is FinOps Plus and this concept of a new way or a new era of accelerating value. And when we think about the agenda today, short and sweet, but it'll probably take about 45 minutes and we'll leave some time for Q&A. We'll start with a recap of this webinar series. So if you've been with Kion before, you're familiar and come to our webinars, you're going to recognize the messaging, the future of FinOps is CloudOps. I'll do a quick kind of recap for those of you that are new to us on what that is, what it means, and how it ties into the rest of today. Then we'll talk about FinOps Plus, what it is, why you should care, what you can do with it, all of those things. And then we'll get into the demo where, and perhaps this is why we have so many of you on the webinar today. A lot of you are excited to see Kion's MCP in action, which will be a prominent feature of the demo that we walk through today. Not all of the demo, but it's going to feature most of what we do and how we show off what FinOps Plus is and how it can apply to your organization. And then we'll end with a quick what's new and next in Kion and leave time for Q&A. So feel free throughout the presentation, if you have a question, ask it, and I'll see it at the end. Otherwise, we'll get to your Q&A towards the end of the presentation. So with that, let's get into the recap. So if you weren't familiar, this is a part of a series that we've been doing over the past year. And that series is The Future of FinOps is CloudOps. And really what I want you to take away from this slide and this message is that at the core of Kion's product and everything that we try to build and kind of our vision for our customers is centered on this idea that FinOps and CloudOps coming together is a way that organizations can actually maximize the value of their cloud, which is ultimately what FinOps is all about. We think that CloudOps teams bring a certain level of governance and policy and automation that, when coupled with what I would call traditional FinOps, makes organizations more efficient, stronger, more successful. And we have a lot of content. I don't know if our marketing team can share some of our previous blogs or webinars in the chat around this, but just know at its core of our message is kind of centering a lot of practices and processes with these two teams coming together. And we'll definitely talk more about this over the next couple slides as well. And so as we get into FinOps Plus, before I even introduce the topic and what it is that I'm trying to say with that, I want to start with kind of taking a look at where we are in the industry this year. So every year at the beginning of the year, the FinOps Foundation launches a survey where they ask practitioners, what do you care about? What are you going to care about? What are you struggling with? And back in January, when the results came out, the top priorities or the top 3 priorities that folks reported on, probably not a surprise. Folks want to still optimize and reduce waste. They're still focused on trying to allocate cloud spend, and they're trying to get a little bit better at forecasting their cloud spend. But where things start to get really interesting to me is when you look at, okay, well, what did they report as things that are going to be increasing in priority over the next year? 2 new things enter. The first is FinOps governance and policy at scale. And the other one is managing cost beyond public cloud. And I'll start with the first bullet and just point out that FinOps governance and policy at scale is exactly the message that we're talking about when we say the future of FinOps is CloudOps. And so it's great to see that that message that we've been driving for, well over a year now is aligning to what, practitioners are saying they're also going to start caring more about. And then the other piece is the cost beyond public cloud. And that's driven by a couple things. And when you look at the key developments that have happened this year, a few things have happened. So the FinOps Foundation introduced this idea of scopes, and they also introduced this concept within that called Cloud Plus. Cloud Plus is essentially this idea that FinOps applies to more than just your public cloud spend. We'll talk more about that here in a couple slides, but just know in general, there's a shift to apply the practices of FinOps to more than just AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, etc. Then there's Focus 1.2 and increased adoption of that spec. So last year, the cloud providers adopted the spec. We were seeing more and more practitioners get interested in wanting to figure out how they can use Focus. And now we're starting to see third-party tools also start to dip their toe into the Focus spec. And we're headed towards, hopefully, a world where getting your billing in a Focus format is an easy thing to get no matter what tool you're using. And the last piece, and this is not specific to just FinOps, but AI is everywhere. I'm sure for those of you on this call, AI has somehow made its way into your weekly or daily way of operating now, whether it's professionally or even personally. And FinOps is no different, right? The concept of doing FinOps for your AI spend, but also having AI help you in your FinOps practices. The foundation now offers certifications. There's a lot happening in this space that's important. And so when I took a look at this and I thought about what I'm hearing from our customers, it led me to the idea that I'm going to share today. But before I jump in too far, I must give some fair attribution to the term FinOps Plus. I had the outline of what I wanted to talk about today, the approach, the processes, but I was still searching on what's the way that I want to package this up into a name. And I remembered that earlier this year, a new customer came on board here at Kion. Customer is Insulet. And Matt Coffrin, who's the director of cloud operations, when we were doing our case study on why did you pick Kion, how did you land with us, Matt shared a couple things, but at a high level, he shared that he was looking for tooling that did more than just visibility and traditional FinOps. He wanted automation, he wanted policy, and he really cared about having a tool that would let him manage all of his third-party spend right alongside um, the rest of his public cloud spend. And so in that, Matt says that we didn't just need FinOps, we needed FinOps Plus. And so, like any great product guy, I steal good ideas when I see them. And so, thanks, Matt, for the idea today for FinOps Plus. And so, that's how we landed on the name. But now let's talk about what it is. And so, at a high level, it is a approach to how you practice FinOps that is just centered on how do you accelerate value. I've broken it down into four key pillars today that I think are the foundation for efficiency and greater impact. And what we'll do here in a couple of slides is I will give an example of each of these pillars and kind of what I'm talking about. But at a high level, the four pillars are CloudOps integration, governance and automation, AI-driven insights, and then Cloud Plus, which I referenced earlier as being a FinOps foundation concept that they announced earlier this year. Two more bullets on this is that what Cloud Plus is aiming to do is trying to solve the challenges and the problems that you already have today, but solving them either a little bit more proactively or trying to solve them more holistically when you think about Cloud Plus and potentially managing more than just your public cloud spend. And lastly, what this is aiming to do is taking those priorities that you have today and it's combining them with a strategic outlook of where FinOps is going. And it's trying to take both of those things and combine them into an approach and into processes that you can be successful for today and going forward over the next several years in your FinOps practice. Before I get into more fun details, I also want to clarify what is this not intended to be? The first is that this is not a way to add more to your plate. I know a new term and new processes can seem daunting for those of you that are still, getting your hands around FinOps, your crawl, walk stage, and there's a lot of FinOps that's still new to you. That's okay. I will say that not everything that I share today will be for everyone, and that kind of leads me to my second bullet. this is not necessarily something that only the most mature FinOps practices should look to adopt. My hope is that today there is something, whether it's a single pillar or it's a single concept that you hear today, that you can apply regardless of your maturity level, and that's the intent. The third bullet there is I'm not trying to redefine FinOps. The foundation and the community that drives that does a great job of giving great content and playbooks and you name it around like how to be successful in FinOps. But I do think we're at such a rapid point in how FinOps is evolving day to day that some new language on how to better be successful and approach these problems is needed. And that's what I'm aiming to do today is just give you some supplemental concepts that you might can apply to your practice. And then the last piece, if I do my job successfully today, I didn't just give you a buzzword to remember. Hopefully, there's something you can take away from a process standpoint or even just holistically how I'm talking about FinOps that you find valuable. And before we get to the pillars, I want to do one more kind of conceptual framing of what this is to make sure we're all on the same page. And so, what FinOps Plus is a bridge between the FinOps that you're doing every day and operational excellence. I want this to be a way that you operate within your FinOps practice. And to kind of visualize this, on the right side of the screen, you have what I will call the FinOps that we're all familiar with. The trying to get visibility into your spend, trying to budget and forecast a little bit better. Maybe you're into anomaly detection now, and ultimately you're trying to drive business value. The plus part of FinOps Plus is just taking those pillars and trying to apply them to these processes. It's trying to make those processes easier for you, more impactful, do them maybe a little bit more proactively. And so, not changing FinOps, I'm just adding a layer on top of it. And so, with that, let's actually get into the pillars. So, as I shared, the next 4 slides are going to be examples of each of these pillars. What I will say is they are not exhaustive. Due to time, I'm going to give kind of an example and an overview of each. If there's anything you find super interesting, whether it's Q&A or after today, and you want to deep dive into more content or more examples for any of these pillars, happy to do that. Would actually love the opportunity to do that. So let's start with pillar 1, which is CloudOps integration. I set this up at the beginning around the future of FinOps as CloudOps, so this should not be a surprise that this is an important pillar from my perspective. But at a high level, when you integrate CloudOps into your FinOps processes, you unlock a new level of efficiency and value that you can't get with those teams operating separately. And so I'm going to give you one example today of what this looks like, and I'm going to specifically click into the account lifecycle process and how account becomes to be and what happens to that account from a FinOps perspective once it exists. And so in this workflow, product or the business comes up with an idea for, a new business idea. Maybe it's a new way that AI could impact an application, whatever it may be. That idea kicks off the need for your CloudOps teams to actually go provision an account for engineering to begin development on. In a world where CloudOps is at the center of your FinOps practices, some things start to happen naturally here. The first, not necessarily traditional FinOps, but we'll talk about why it's important, is this idea of least privilege access. So making sure that the engineers who need access to this account have the right level of access, but they don't have any more than they might need. You don't have a junior engineer with administrative capabilities, things of that nature. You've also got tagging automation built in from the moment this account exists. So this is your CloudOps team taking whatever your tagging policies and standards are for your organization and putting them on the account for the day that it exists so that the idea of infrastructure being stood up without those proper accounts can be eliminated. It looks like financial policies. This could be as simple as a budget, or it could be as sophisticated as policies defining what waste should look like in this account and then generating alerts or actions based on those policies. And when you do them at the beginning of the account lifecycle, you never have this idea of a cost overrun or a piece of waste lingering for a month or 2 months because you had policies in place from day one. And then lastly, this piece is important. The ability to prioritize getting these accounts created safely, securely with the right policies and getting them into the hands of engineering as fast as possible creates a greater time to value. If we see it every day where customers come to us or prospects come to us and they have account creation cycles that can last weeks or months. And if you think about what's not happening in that time frame is your engineering teams are not allowed to actually start development and start building the application that's going to bring you new revenue or whatever it may be. And so all of these things play a role in the FinOps. And in a world where CloudOps is integrated, that account is created, development starts, and you've got proper visibility from day one. You've got guardrails for your spend, your quicker time to value, and you also help to reduce any risk that comes along with operating in the cloud. And so that's a high level of what I'm talking about in pillar one. I hope this particular example at least makes sense conceptually in terms of what I'm pushing here. And like I said, any questions here about this pillar, feel free to drop them in the chat. But now I'm going to move on to pillar number two, where this is different than the previous slide, but you're going to see some overlap in terms of taking that CloudOps integration and combining it with governance and automation. And at a high level, what governance and automation is, or at least how I'm going to define and summarize it, is that it's policies that combine with automation that then create guardrails that maximize your value and increase ROI for your organization. And I'm going to be a little prescriptive on this slide of showing exactly how I think about it, but governance and automation can be done and executed in a lot of ways. So this is not necessarily a plug and play for any organization. But the way that I think about it is that you start with the idea of policy and specifically FinOps policy. This is where your FinOps leads or your FinOps teams come together with your CloudOps team and you start to define what does waste mean for our organization at large? What does waste mean maybe at more of an application or team level? You define tagging standards. What is the tagging expectations for the entire organization? And you start to identify any process or anything that's holding you back from getting value. This could be a manual process in terms of how you alert users on changes in their spend, anything like that. But the idea is that you take these policies and you put automation around them. And that's where you create automated guardrails and what I like to call the proactive FinOps approach. This is where you start to proactively prevent waste or cost overruns because you have proper automation and policy in place. This is where you start to save people's time. You remove the inefficiencies of having to chase down someone to tag their instance, or you see something that's flagging as waste in your dashboard and you have to spend time figuring out who owns it. Is it actually waste? Can I delete it? It's trying to eliminate as much as you can those conversations, those time wasting activities, so that you've got more opportunity to spend time on value add work. Ultimately, what this does is it's going to help create a higher confidence in your cloud because you've got policies in place, you've got automation in place to make you a little bit more proactive and a little bit more secured from a cost standpoint going forward. And I do see we have a hand raised. If you don't mind just documenting whatever your question may be in the chat, and we'll come back to you at the end. And so to continue on this, in this proactive FinOps world, the reason I can bold the increased ROI at the top of this slide is because a lot of this is what Kion's product is rooted in. And we see with our own customers and our own case studies what this approach can do. And so to give you just some examples of what this can look like, it can mean taking a slow and inefficient process that you have today and 10xing that process, right? Going faster, allowing your folks to focus on other work that's more value add. It means saving time, right? This is real FTE labor being spent doing other items or other tasks that is more important. And then we've also got examples where customers, just by putting in guardrails on how they define low-hanging fruit for a dev or a sandbox environment, have been able to prevent over $1 million in annual waste just by putting in these guardrails. And before I move on to the next pillar, what I will leave you with here is when you think about what FinOps Plus is trying to portray, a lot of it can be captured actually right here on this slide. This idea of being able to do more with less because you've got automation in place. There's a lot going on in FinOps today. There's a lot of problems to solve. I'm sure many of you are very busy and can't get to everything. This is where you lean on this idea of policy and automation doing a lot of work for you going forward. And so with that, let's move to pillar number three, which is probably a reason a lot of you are here today, is to see more of this or learn more about how Kion's approaching this. And this is AI-driven insights. So at a high level, AI is opening a new door of value for FinOps. And this can be AI within the features and tool sets that you're already using today, or it could be through something like a model context protocol or an MCP to allow your FinOps practice to reach new levels. And so what I will do today, since we're going to spend a lot of demo, I'm going to be brief on what this can look like or what this can mean, but I'll summarize it into 3 areas. The first, AI brings efficiency. This idea of just getting things done a little bit faster or getting insights a little bit quicker. On the right-hand side of my screen, I simply just asked Claude Desktop, what was my spend for my org last week? And I quickly get an answer. And then I can continue to ask questions off of that. Maybe I want to use it to create a budget for me and do that in an efficient amount of time. There's a lot of ways that you can use this that we're going to show in just a moment, but efficiency is one area. The other is strategic recommendations. So insights and speed on tasks is one thing, but getting information and getting ideas or suggestions on what to do with that information is another layer of what AI can bring to us. In this example, you'll see that it's kind of giving me some things to think about in terms of, where I might have some right sizing needs or some general questions to consider, which is helpful when you're thinking about how to attack your potentially unused or wasted spend, or just where you're going in FinOps from a strategy standpoint, relying on AI to help you ask and answer the right questions ahead of time. And then the last piece is governance. So AI, just like it is, like you can with getting insights in your spend, it also can be used to give you insights into your compliance posture or how well you're governed. And so an example of what's on the screen is I actually asked Claude Desktop to write me a policy to prevent any S3 buckets from having a public IP address in our test account at Kion. And I'll show a version of what this looks like in a moment, but it wrote up a policy to help prevent that within my cloud going forward. And so a lot of use cases there. This is being very broad, but efficiency, guidance, and governance is how I would summarize what AI is going to provide to FinOps. And before I move on, if you're not familiar with MCPs, I would leave you with this kind of way of summarizing it, is that MCPs ultimately are connecting the tools that you're using every day to an AI model. And what it's going to allow you to do is serve as an interface to maximize the power of that tooling alongside AI. And so we're headed into a whole new world there. I'm excited about where we are now and where we're going to be going as an industry, and even at where Kion's at. But yeah, we'll leave AI-driven insights here for now. And I see some questions coming in the chat. Continue to put those there, and we'll get to them shortly. The last pillar is Cloud Plus. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to clarify. Cloud Plus is not my term. It's not my language. This is directly from the FinOps Foundation. This started earlier this year. And Cloud Plus is essentially focused on expanding FinOps to all of your technology spend and not just public cloud. When you think about what this looks like, it's broken down into scopes. So you've got public cloud, you have your SaaS applications or third-party tools, you've got data center. The FinOps Foundation breaks out Gen AI spend into its own way of approaching FinOps. You've got your licensing spend, and then private cloud is also separated from data center from the foundation's point of view. And when you think about why this is important, is the first is it provides you unified visibility into your spend. Too often, and for many reasons, we've historically thought of what does it cost to run this application, or what is my profit margin on this application, as just being what is revenue compared to what is my public cloud expense. But in reality, there's potentially a lot of other things that drive the total value you're getting from that application. And so by combining all of your infrastructure, all of your tooling that supports that, you start to have visibility into your spend, potentially total cost of ownership. Once you have that visibility, you now enter this world where you can start to have more holistic governance and optimization. You can't get to optimization of your third-party spend if you don't actually have visibility into what it's spending and where you might have waste. And then the last piece is it indirectly provides some strategic alignment. So FinOps is a lot about bringing a lot of personas together to be more successful in collaboration. And when you start to apply FinOps practices across these different scopes, you innately start to bring in more folks into the conversation. The obvious one is CloudOps that I've talked about, but another example is just procurement, right? As you're getting ready to make renewals on your third-party tools. You can have more strategic conversations about your future spend for those tools, maybe try to get better discounts, things of that nature. Once you have these all in one place, you can start to govern, you can start to make better decisions. And this is where FinOps is headed in terms of applying to more than just public cloud. So with that, that is the four pillars and a quick recap. And I'm about halfway here, so I'm roughly on the time I wanted to be. We're now going to go to a demo. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to do a live kind of prompt with Claude Desktop using Kion's new MCP server, which was released just yesterday, actually. So for current Kion customers, that's available for you all to take advantage of now. And then I'll do a quick kind of jump into the UI, show some of the impact of what we did in the MCP client, and then touch on a couple other things. And then I will try my best to stay on time and not yap too much on this demo. So let's do this. Let's open up Claude. And just to kind of explain, this is already connected to a QA internal Kion environment. But this is the Claude desktop application like anyone could go and use today, but with a connection to Kion. And so we're going to start by asking a basic question. We're going to say, can you tell me about my Kion spend in July? So I kicked off this request, and you'll see it working in the background. It's going to start using some of Kion's public API endpoints to retrieve some of this information. And you'll see very quickly here, I've got an answer. All right, my spend in July was 768,000, and it's asking me if I want to break that down any further. From here, let's say I'm interested in understanding the breakdown between my public cloud spend and my third-party spend. Can you break this down by provider label key to show me public cloud versus third party? So now I've kicked off an ask to break this down between public cloud and third party spend. It's retrieving some other endpoints that it needs for this behavior. It's still working here. Awesome. So now I'm starting to get some insights into how this environment's broken out. You'll see public cloud providers. In this particular environment, we have three providers hooked up. And then we also have two third-party tools hooked up with Atlas, MongoDB, and Databricks. And I quickly have a summary of between my total spend and what my public cloud spend and what my third-party spend is in a quick, simple prompt. From here, maybe I want to start doing a deeper dive on a specific project. So can you tell me my current run rate for my data science? Oops. It's a lot more nerve-wracking typing in front of an audience. So I kicked off an ask to tell me about my run rate for my data science project. So what this is doing is it knows project is a concept in Kion. And so it's retrieving which project I'm talking about. And what it should hopefully do in short order here is give me some analysis on how that is performing. And so what you see here is it's kicked off a July kind of total, and it's also giving me my run rate so far through August. And what's really cool and what starts to happen here is you get some insights. So it's telling me how it projects August right now, some trends, what my annual run rate would be based on this. And what I can now do is say, can you compare this to my annual budget? So I'm going to ask it to take what it's spending and compare that to my budget that I've got in place in Kion to make sure that I've got the right amount of spend allocated. So it'll start to do a breakdown here, and I'm going to go a little quick here, but it'll tell me what my variances were. So you can actually see in July, I was under budgeted by quite a bit, by over 25, or under budgeted by 25%. Starting to give me some projections for August. It looks like I'm actually okay for August for now. So lots of good information in here, but what I want to do that I think is really cool is I'm going to ask Claude if it can help me estimate my Amazon Bedrock testing that I'm going to ramp up this month. So I'm going to ask it to estimate usage for Amazon Bedrock. And what this should do, so it's asking me some parameters here. What does it mean, requests per day? I may not know that off the top of my hand. So can you estimate moderate usage? So this will kick off its own analysis of what it considers moderate usage. And hopefully it doesn't take too long. Awesome. So it's coming back with what it assumes moderate usage assumptions are and giving me some additional detail on pricing and things of that nature. And now it's starting to tell me how this could impact my budget. And this is really cool, I think. So talks about headroom I might have, things of that nature. And so what I'm going to do is just to show also what this looks like from an action-driven standpoint. So my September budget in Kion right now is 185,000. And although this is saying I have some headroom, I want to be a little bit more conservative and go ahead and adjust that. So can you update my monthly budget going forward this year to be 200,000? So my monthly budget going forward for the rest of the year for September through December is 185,000. I'm going to actually ask Claude to go ahead and just fix those next months, bump it up $15,000, give me a little bit more headroom in my budget because I know I'm going to be ramping up some additional testing. And so what this is doing, it's showing you kind of the requests it's kicking off in the APIs. And here it's going to give you a summary that here's my budget throughout the year. And you will see that it increased the last 4 months by 15,000 on my behalf. What I don't have time for today is we could now create some alerts on this budget. We could make potentially an alert specifically for my Amazon Bedrock spend now that I'm expecting it to ramp up. But I hope that this gives you kind of a quick example of some fun, I should just call it more than fun, some impactful, but also fun. It's just cool to kind of see how this works. Before I show that actually working in the UI and doing some other things, I had a couple pre-canned chats that I wanted to show you all to give you a different flavor of what you can use this for. So here, I asked Claude to create me an executive dashboard, essentially. And I actually wanted it to visualize an executive dashboard for me. And so it goes through and gives me the highlights, but I can actually open this and you will see, and this truly took about 20 seconds. It was how I roughly timed it. It gave me just an impromptu dashboard that, what if I just needed a quick visual to throw into a PowerPoint or to throw in an email to someone like a CIO. This gives me an overview of my cloud spend. It splits it out between public cloud and third party, gives me a few graphs for relevant information, also provides some trends. And then at the bottom here, this is where you kind of get into some strategic recommendations, gives you some things to think about and some additional insights. And this was all done in one request for just an executive dashboard, which I thought was pretty cool. And I wanted to share with you all today. The second thing that I'm going to do, and this one is, I was trying to get this to be a little less overwhelming. It's pretty overwhelming, so I'm going to be brief and just talk to it for a second. But I wanted to show how powerful an action-driven connection between AI and a platform can be. And so I started off with a prompt asking for Claude to tell me about any RDS spend in my application X project that is untagged. And it goes through a process of telling me that untagged spend. And I get down to here and I ask it to actually write me a policy to make sure all of those RDS resources have been tagged with Team X and to also make sure that policy runs daily so that going forward, there's no more ongoing needing to manually clean up. Once a day, a check is in place to make sure everything's tagged. And so what's happening here is it's kicking off a lot of things. It asks me a couple prompts to confirm what region should this apply to, making sure it has the right tag before it goes and executes the policy. And then it comes through and makes an update. And ultimately, without getting into all the nitty-gritty details, it actually produces a policy and a check that can now be used in Kion. And so what I did here is I actually did not tell it to do it just yet. I wanted to review it, and then I wanted to show you all today. Can you go ahead and create this policy for me. So now it should kick off the request that I did a little bit earlier this morning just to save us time. And it is going to go through the process of implementing this compliance check into Kion. So we'll give it just a moment here. Hopefully it doesn't spin too long. Awesome. All right. So it's created the compliance check. There's lots of fun detail here, but what I'll highlight is this is the name that it created. And so what I'm going to do now is just to show how this works. I'm going to hop over to Kion. So if those of you that have never seen Kion, this is Kion. This is the application. But I'm going to jump down into compliance checks, and I'm going to search for that name. And you will see right here is the compliance check that it just created from the Claude prompt. And I promise this wasn't pre-created. This actually just happened. So this is in here. It's got a description of what it is based off what I asked it to do. The policy can be found and vetted here. And I can now figure out how I want to deploy this, what projects I want to have this, all of those things in a very short amount of time. I hope that fires people up. Like I think that's incredible. And there's a lot of work that the Kion side we need to do to make these things more efficient, more secure. But it's pretty unbelievable that in just a few moments of simple language, I've created a policy that could potentially save me money, make people's lives a little bit easier, get things done a little bit faster. So I'm seeing lots of fun reactions in the chat. So I hope everybody's loving it. So what I'm going to do now, because I am getting a little late on time, if I want to keep time for Q&A, I'm not going to get into too much. I do want to show, so earlier we created that budget for the data science team. I want to show that for September, actually, let's just do this. If you remember, well, that doesn't help you actually. Let's do this. If you remember, I asked it to update from 185 to 200,000. So this is showing me now my September budget is set to 200,000. So that properly worked and got kicked off. And so now that's in place. The other thing I will show you is, yes, I used Claude to show me, my third-party spend, my cloud provider spend, but this stuff also exists in the UI, and there's still a place for this. So you'll see on my home dashboard, I've got AWS, GCP, Databricks, Azure, and Atlas, all in the same report, right? And so the combination of the tooling that you're using and applying some of these FinOps Plus approaches is there, as well as relying on AI to help you, accomplish these goals and tasks are all kind of part of the package here and what I'm talking about with FinOps Plus. So with that, there's more stuff I wanted to get to, but we are at 20 minutes and I got 2 more slides to get to. So that is the demo for today, and I hope you guys all enjoyed that. Let me now jump back. All right. So what we're going to do quickly, because I see we have lots of questions and I want to make sure we have time. Let's talk about takeaways. So I'm going to do a high-level summary of what we talked about today. The first is FinOps Plus is simply trying to be a better way to operate your practice and accelerate value. A lot of what we talked about today is a way of approaching problems and more of putting some operational excellence around those problems. And that's really what FinOps Plus is. It's not about you needing to do more work. It's really about combining how you operate with a strategic outlook of where FinOps is going to try to set you up for better efficiency and impact. This last one, I truly believe, and we've got examples ourselves to back this up in general, but I think organizations that adopt a FinOps Plus approach, even if it's just part of it or a certain pillar, are going to increase their cloud ROI. And so my challenge for you all today is to think about where your organization is at this point and start thinking through ways that you could start on this approach. Maybe not everything applies. Maybe it's just one piece of one pillar, but pick something to start with and start small. But I encourage you, between now and the end of the year, start somewhere and start applying these principles and these practices. And so next steps, the first one is kind of off of what I was just saying. I encourage you to either start or continue this approach. For many of our customers, I hope that you're already applying some of these principles. But yeah, review this content, plan for ways to improve it. The second one, and I mean this, provide feedback. So I'll see what feedback's already been shared in the chat, but reach out, LinkedIn, email, whatever it may be. Let me know your thoughts on today, ideas you have for this, right? This is the start of the concept of FinOps Plus in some ways that I want to try to define it and summarize it, but it's going to evolve. It's going to change as I learn more, as I hear more use cases from you all in the community. And so please reach out, give me feedback on how you thought today went, how you think the approach works, anything in that realm. And then lastly, if you're new to Kion, you thought something was interesting today, you want to learn more, that Calendly there, QR code should take you to somewhere you can schedule, you can learn more and have a demo with us. And so last piece here before I do Q&A, just a one slide on what's new and next for us. So we've got a release coming out in about 2 weeks, Kion 3.14. Really exciting things are going to be in that release. The first is what we're calling custom accounts. Think of this as a way to just enable that Cloud Plus pillar that I was talking about. It's a way to make that easier and more possible within Kion. It's essentially a bring your own data. Whatever you want to bring into Kion, we're going to give you the tools to be successful and bring that in, manage it, budget against it, do alerts and enforcements against it, whatever it may be. The second is Cloud Pulse, which is a operational dashboard that's focused on deployments and statuses of CloudFormation templates. This is something that many of our customers have asked for a while now, and we're excited to deliver it and allow them to be a little bit more efficient in how they operate and manage their cloud infrastructure. And then improved forecasting. I'm excited that we're going to have a complete overhaul of the forecasting feature that we had in Kion previously. It's going to be a better UX, a better model. It's going to offer users an ability to do user-driven inputs on top of our model. A lot of fun things coming with that, and I'm excited for folks to use it and give us feedback. And then the last piece, which is not tied to the 3.14 release, but that MCP server or the MCP client that I was just demoing, that is available now for Kion customers to go use and start having fun with. When you think about what's up next for us, so we're going to continue to heavily invest in how AI makes FinOps easier and better for organizations. And so that's going to look like an integrated AI assistant right in the Kion application. And we're going to really focus on actions. And so I showed an example today of writing a policy and a compliance check in Kion. We're going to put a lot of effort into making sure that those compliance policies are consistently written. They're written in a way that's secure. They give you feedback on what they're going to do before they're actually implemented. And we're going to put a lot of love there, where my goal and my vision for this is that non-technical people can come in and write powerful policies in a safe, secure way by using simple language to do that within Kion. The second piece is improved resource allocation. So we're breaking apart a lot of the way that the org chart functions right now with accounts, and we're going to make it easier to group your resources and have to rely less on the account structure within the org chart to better budget, to better enforce, and better govern going forward. And then the last piece is we're going to try to upgrade our automation policies by providing you more out-of-the-box templates. We now have a library of things that we've seen our customers be successful with custom policies that they've written, plus the ones that we've written on our own for customers. We want to start to surface those in a little bit easier to use, easier to apply way, so folks can get started kind of from day one instead of having to struggle with writing a policy in the most perfect way. So with that, that's what's new and next. I see lots of conversation going on. We'll move to Q&A, and I will try to catch up on what I have missed here. So let me open up Q&A. And I don't know what's already been answered in the chat, so I'm going to just pick a few things here. All right. Couple feedback, couple questions. Let's see. Trying to figure out where to start here. Sorry. All right, so I see a question around how are you drawing guardrails around Claude with your environment, considering sensitive data involved in the process? How are you making sure that data confidentially is in place while interacting with the AI agent? I know Mason is on from our engineering team who helped lead this effort. And so, Mason, I'm going to let you answer that in the chat while I search for another one. And you may have already answered it, so apologies. I'm trying to catch up here. And so I see Are the AI capabilities available in the self-hosted option? Are the infrastructure requirements available for that hosting model? So yeah, and Mason may have answered this in the chat. Kion is self-hosted. So for those of you that have never interacted with us, we actually are installed in your cloud account. And so we don't own any data, we don't have any access to data, and that's something that our customers value about us. This AI model does not break that mold in layman's terms, because I'm layman and not technical either. Um, think of this as it's using the permissions that you already have granted or not granted a user in Kion, and it's just surfacing that between another client that you've also chosen to give permissions to. So if you're using Claude Desktop, for example, and that's already an approved service for your organization, Kion is not surfacing anything net new. It's not breaking down any of that agreement we basically have within your environment. And so maybe I did a bad job of answering that, and I'll let Mason uh, answer that better than I did. But no, it does not change the self-hosted solution. You don't need a different offering of Kion to be able to use that. Um, so I see someone asked about level of access and permission for the deploy policies. So Kion's got a really robust permission set. And so essentially, we have what's called compliance checks in Kion. And for someone to be able to use those or deploy those, they would need the ability to write those checks, which is a very explicit permission in Kion and something that typically only our admins or super users even have. So that's definitely guarded if that's not something that you will want users to use in the future. Um, is there any additional license costs for AI? So the only cost would be whatever if you have like a premium license for one of the clients. So for like Cloud Desktop, if you have a premium license, that would be all you're billing through there. It's not necessarily an additional cost from the Kion side. We're not going to charge you more to be able to use our MCP client or anything of that nature. Um, all right, we have lots of good questions here. I apologize for those of you that I'm missing your questions. Um, I see a question about Terraform. I hope someone answered that on my behalf in the chat. Um, all right, let me pick a few more here. So I see Kion is more focused on CloudOps versus FinOps. Just curious to what extent Kion can provide an org with their FinOps, in parentheses, cloud cost optimization needs, and what makes it different than other cloud cost optimization solutions in the market. Yeah, so the reason we talk about that future of FinOps is CloudOps is because we are trying to attack the FinOps practice a little bit more holistically, and so we do offer what I will call traditional cloud cost optimization. If I had more time to show you the application or the platform, you'll see kind of traditional savings opportunities out of the box. These are, low-hanging fruit. This is right-sizing opportunities, but we combine that with the ability to write something like those checks and policies that I showed to customize those opportunities and make them more fit your use case if the out-of-the-box ones do not. So we still approach FinOps from a optimization standpoint. We just do some of it in a little bit of a different way by trying to do it more proactively with policies and governance. Um, all right. And then I apologize all. This is a good problem to have with a lot of questions, but I'm kind of just scrolling through and seeing there's some that are similarly asked, so I'm trying to find one more new one. Um, all right, and then there's a question here around interfacing with enterprise service level management tools like ServiceNow. If we've got Randy on, he could also add some clarity here. But the short answer is in the future, right? Think of the MCPs as eventually being able to connect and work within other MCPs, right? This is going to eventually, hopefully, be a little bit of an ecosystem. So some of that is reliant on what other tools may or may not provide. We could definitely integrate, and we do integrate with APIs from other tools. So there's definitely a path there to have to understand more about your question there to answer more specifically. All right. So what I will do, and I promise to take this on as an action item, there's more questions in both the official Q&A and the chat here than we're going to have time to answer. So I will get a downloaded script here, and by attending the webinar today, we've got your email. So I will try to answer each of these in a response back to you if I feel like I didn't cover it enough today. So with that, I know we've got 8 minutes left. There's some good discussion happening in the chat. And so if you want to stay on, I'll keep kind of combing through some questions here and whatnot. But I want to say thank you to everybody who attended. This was an exciting webinar for us to give. I hope it was exciting content for you, gave you something to think about going forward. And yeah, look forward to feedback and continuing the conversation on this. So I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you for your time.